Okay, so we are reading Robert Monroe's Far Journeys. We are on chapter 8, page number 93 of the book and page number 52 of the PDF.
Knowing of such assistance and help, I approached my visits into the cycling rings in near Earth environs with much more confidence and consciousness than before. I felt an absolute security. If I got in beyond my depth, they would pull me out to safety. Although I found that their concept of beyond my depth and mine differed somewhat. I may have believed that I was going down for the third and last time, screaming for help, yet they waited until the eighth or ninth time before calmly extending a hand. All part of a learning process, but with built in intensity.
So, this is like true for any kind of teacher, right? The guru. The guru always wants the student to stretch himself or herself, and only at the end will they extend the helping hand to pull them out. So this is the same over there also. They want you to learn, they want you to grow. So they're going to allow you to make the mistakes. They are going to allow you to feel the stress and the strain. And when they feel that you're reaching your breaking point, that is when they are going to pull you out. So there is a lot of confidence in the sense that when you start developing this trust that yes, you will be looked after and whatever is happening for the best, then a lot of strength comes into play, where you feel supported and you never feel alone. So this is one of the beauties of going into these expanded states and actually connecting with your guides in a real feeling kind of a sense, where you know that they are there to support you. So naturally you can do everything that you do with more confidence and more fearlessness.
A favorite quick and learn forever method of theirs was simulation. It was based on their ability to create and place into a human consciousness. Mine, an earth type situation, so real and so overwhelming that I could not tell reality from illusion. I don't know the limits of such simulation, talent, technology, nor do I know the extent to which they employ the technique. It may be only in my own particular case, but I doubt it. The potentials of its applications in other ways begs for broad speculation.
So for example, Shimangla, your mic. So, for example, if we, when we are dreaming, and especially when we are lucid dreaming, right? We are in an environment which may be very earth-like, very familiar, and we have conscious control in that dream, in that lucid dream. So, and we can achieve and do things in a lucid dream that we would not have been able to achieve and do in our normal waking consciousness. So now what he's saying here is that they over there have the capability to create a reality which feels real, but maybe just a stimulation, right? Now, when we watch movies like Star Trek or we watch Star Wars, they have the stimulation rooms where you can go and create any kind of stimulation and actually fight it out. Do whatever processes it. Mainly, they used to use it for training, right? Now, even aircraft, when people are training to fly aircraft, they have the aircraft stimulator, which actually stimulates the environment that you would be in as if you were flying a real plane. So it can be used as a very powerful training tool. So they are using it over there to train us.
In my own pattern, it was usually applied as an instant cleanup of minor emotional patterns that blocked or distorted my clarity of perception or my stability. Usually, I was unaware of such dysfunction. They would note it and offer to take care of the problem. I would be informed that the lesson was about to take place with my consent. Yet, once into the simulation, it became absolutely and totally real, and I lived it. Most of them were short, single events that were the peak decision making points under very adverse circumstances. The vital part, the lesson to be learned indelibly was my constructive and reasoned resolution of the problem. If I did not come up with the desired action, the simulation would be repeated until I did. Even in the repetition, I couldn't break through the reality of the simulation. Yet, once the training sequence was completed, I then knew it was for what it was.
So we are constantly talking about the patterns that influence us, the patterns that repeat themselves in our lives. They become extremely important because the universe is attempting to tell us that you need to pay attention to this and you need to learn about this or you need to transcend this, right? So over here again, what is it? He's saying very clearly, usually applied in an instant cleanup of minor emotional patterns that block or distort my clarity of perception. So patterns will always distort you because they will take you into a path which you are not meant to go. That's why it becomes very, very important to start observing the patterns in our lives. And what he's saying is the simulation was so real that outside the simulation, he knew that they're going to work with a pattern. Inside it, he didn't realize what it was. When he came out, then he understood that, okay, this was a pattern and this was what we were working on.
Bhaiya, can you explain to me the pattern this bit about?
So anything that keeps repeating itself in your life, right? Let us say a certain staff of yours, whenever that staff comes in front of you, you get annoyed.
Okay.
Or you keep losing your watch. You keep
Okay.
misplacing your watch.
Right.
Or whenever you eat something, you get a stomach upset. I mean,
Yeah.
that particular thing. Or if you go to a movie hall, you start getting claustrophobic. And it's a pattern. Every time you do that, the same thing happens. So whenever there's a pattern in your life, you need to start paying attention. It becomes extremely important.
Out here, they're saying that it would break the pattern if you went into
So
this.
now what is happening? There's a simulation which is going on, which is putting you into a scenario or a situation where the pattern is playing out.
Okay.
And you are meant to take a decision or you're meant to take an action which would allow you to transcend that pattern.
Okay.
Right. Now, suppose you take the wrong decision, then the simulation is replayed.
Okay.
Till you take the right decision, which will get you out of the pattern.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You get that? So they
Yeah,
are
I've got
using it as a game to
Yeah.
keep repeating it till you get it right. So
So
many
it's to
people who
break your
play
pattern.
video games, they get stuck at a particular point in the video game. Right? Now what happens? They have to keep going back to that particular point and then playing it out. This is something that we were observing in the workshop yesterday also. They said observe the patterns in your life.
Yeah.
And you were going into an altered state of consciousness where you could actually observe the pattern from a higher perspective and then transcend it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was very similar to what we are talking about over here.
Okay.
Yes,
I've got
Nizla?
Okay,
Thank you.
Aniket, hi. I wanted to ask you this. Suppose the pattern is being followed in your generations. I would say, suppose like something has happened with my in-laws or with, and then I feel that same pattern with me and my son. So
Yeah.
what would you call this pattern? How to break this kind of a
Yeah.
pattern?
So patterns can go through generations. Okay.
That's
This is something that we saw very clearly in family constellations.
okay. So
Now,
how
when you transcend your pattern,
Mhm.
you will affect your past generations as well as your future generations.
Okay, so in that, so kuch samajh mein nahi aaya, but how to go through that?
See, you are going through something, right?
Mhm.
You are going through that pattern at an unconscious level.
Okay, yeah,
Any pattern which manifests is manifesting at an unconscious level
yeah,
because
true,
you don't want it to manifest. It is
true,
manifest,
yeah,
right? And you have no control over that.
true.
Now, once you bring your conscious awareness to the pattern and you pay attention to what is triggering the pattern, you put yourself in a position to deal with the pattern.
Because Niket, you won't understand this. Just 1 hour ago,
Yeah.
me and my mother-in-law, we were just talking and we realized about this pattern. And I told her, I'll be asking you how to break this pattern,
Yeah. So the point
Suddenly,
is,
imagine in so many years, I've never got to know, but today it just happened.
so that you attended the program yesterday, right? So it is going to stimulate something. So
Okay.
now the point comes that you need to pay attention to the pattern. What is the trigger to the pattern? We deal with this very well in the advanced excursion workshop.
Okay, I need to do that.
Yeah. So where we go into the thing and then we revert it from there. We use an encoding to get out of it.
Okay. Thank you. Nen.
Okay. But
Yeah.
the main thing is to become aware of the pattern. That's the first step. Without being
Today
aware
was
of
the
the
first
pattern,
step.
how can you deal with it? It's not
Today
possible.
was the first step. Today
What?
was the first step.
Exactly. So, see, this is not true only for you, it is true for all of us. We are always in unconscious patterns. And the more you can get out of your pattern, the more you are getting out of your belief systems. Because your patterns at some point in time is created by your belief system. Okay. Now the
Okay.
belief system may be coming down generations and it is being transmuted into the future generations also.
Oh, I hope not.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Rituji, you had a question?
Yeah, what Nirjati was talking about, the family patterns, can they also be solved by going what we did the meditation yesterday?
Absolutely. So
That you
if,
go,
see, you are a part of the pattern, right?
yeah.
Okay, it's repeating with you.
Yeah.
Now, where has it come from? It has come from your ancestors.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
where is it going? It is going to your offspring.
Yes.
Now, if you change in the middle and you transcend the pattern, then it will have an upward effect as well as a downward effect.
Okay, it will, and we can do it the same what we did the yesterday's meditation.
That is one of the processes of doing it. There are many processes. You can
but
use
this is
family constellation to break it. You can go into these altered states and then also break it. So there are many ways of breaking it.
okay.
But
Thank you.
again, I'm repeating, the most important thing is to become aware of it.
Okay.
Now, what Robert Monroe is talking about here is that he is going into that altered state, and the guys up there are taking him through stimulations that he needs to get over.
Okay.
So he's getting a lot of support there. Now, in the last workshop also, you were being taken there, and then you were asking your higher self to guide you. So it's basically the same process.
Okay.
Okay, that is coming out over here.
Thank you.
An interesting sidelight arose when our laboratory explorers met and associated with intelligent beings who did accommodate to the use of words, some of whom closely resembled my percepts of the inspects. Further, they greeted me with familiarity, and I felt the same towards them.
So what does this mean? That many of the explorers, and naturally Robert Monroe himself, started meeting regularly with people or intelligence, you could call them species or whatever, over there, and they started, getting to know each other. So a friendship started to develop over a period of time.
I had never asked the inspects exactly what their role was in the human earth pattern. I assumed they were simply a graduate school version of the ex-human helpers from the outer rings. Their mode of operation and purpose seemed very similar, except that the inspects had knowledge and technology far beyond that drawn from the human experience. The fact that they seemed to be independent of the recycling rings supported this belief. To pose questions about motives seemed irreverent. Or perhaps I didn't want to endanger the good thing I had going for me. Thus, I had no direct and conscious communication with them while in the OOB state.
So, what is he saying? That the inspects were from the outer rings and they did not have any kind of connection with the inner rings. The inner rings is when people are they are in the cycle of rebirth, right? They are being born, they're going through the life process, going up and then coming back. So now once they have transcended this, then they go into the outer ring. So they are more evolved beings. I would say, in my view, that people who have evolved beyond focus 27 and gone into 34 and above, that is when you go into the outer rings. Now, this is my own take over here by understanding what I experienced in focus 34 and 27. But I think that this is what it is.
But we fools can't let it alone. On a particular night, I had an idea and I decided to try it out. I had been developing a sense of familiarity with the radiation of the inspecs and thought I could home in on the signal, the ident, just as I could others. I might learn much. Here is the event as taken from my notes and expanded to a semblance of understanding.
Shivangla, slow down a bit. So now what happened? Everyone has an ident or an identity or a basic signature. We've spoken about this before, like our cell phones. Each of them has a sequence. So when that number is dialed, it automatically goes to that particular phone. So Robert Monroe wanted to become more intelligent. So he was wanting to tag on to the ident or the identification signature of the inspect to figure out from where the inspect was coming. Now, this should be interesting.
Time 2:17 a.m. Bedroom. After 2 sleep cycles, awake, rested, relaxed. Went through unhook rollout method into second body, rolled out of second, and this time I did not have a percept of the ident inspect. Not much, but enough, I thought, homing on the ident. Went through normal reach and stretch procedure, moved rapidly through ring system and beyond, which did not surprise me. Began to feel warm, more so as I went until it became almost too uncomfortable and was at the point of turning back, when I rammed headlong into something and collapsed, shaken. I reached out and there was a barrier, smooth in texture, rigid, impenetrable. Still very uncomfortable from the heat, I pulled myself together, knowing this was the end of the line. I might as well turn back to the physical. And a bright light, very intense, glowed in front of me. First ovate, reshaping into a tall humanoid form. So bright I cringed from it. For what seemed an eternity, I shrank back, trying to shield myself from the brightness. Then I began to cool down until I was no longer uncomfortable and I could tolerate the brightness.
So now, what happened? He reached for the ident, but he reached a barrier, right? Now, what was that barrier? That barrier was there because in his state of consciousness, there is a limit to which he can travel, right? There is a limit, and that limit is that barrier where he bangs and he falls down over there. Now, the ident again appears to him over there at the barrier.
Is that better for you? Better was an understatement. Much longer and I would have melted. Did you bump your head? Well, I guess I could call it that. Usually my head was out front when. It is nothing to be concerned about. You have a hard head, Mr. Monroe. That turned me around. I never thought of God having a whimsical sense of humor. That and the Mr. Monroe routine. I straightened, no longer cowering. I almost felt like reaching out and shaking hands in greeting.
So we talk about this. We talk about this in the workshops also, that in these expanded states, there is a lot of humor also. Okay, so what we are seeing here is part of that humor.
There are more significant and suitable ways. I was getting bewildered. I was just floating there, trying to figure out what happened. You encountered a condition similar to that which your scientists call a standing wave, where two like energies in phase appear to cancel one another to zero. Yet there is no zero, as energy does not cancel, it transforms into other dynamic states.
So a standing wave will always create a resonance or a barrier.
So now I supposedly knew what happened, but that didn't explain where I was. If I asked, where is a relative term? The most reasonable explanation from your perspective is that you are just outside the portal, the gate to our reality, a conversion point. The ident you used brought you here. Well, there are gates to heaven, after all. I guess they could be construed as golden and or pearly if you thought heaven was beyond. You are correct in your assumption. It is all from within the observer. The percept finally came out. The communication was so natural and so rapid that I had missed it completely. There I was, casually talking, communicating with this wonderfully glowing being, just as I would a new friend. It was answering my questions before I asked them. So I must be using NVC better than I realized. No point in holding back any part of me, even if I wanted to. Whatever I was, it was reading every thought I had anyway. I opened wide all of what I was.
So when we go into these expanded states, nothing is hidden. Everything is known and available. You have to have eyes, ears, nose, taste, and touch to be able to perceive it. That's all. We feel that we can hide stuff, and that is true even for this 3D reality, but actually, nothing is hidden. Everything is known and everything is available. We are now seeing it in the mundane world with Google. If you just type your name on Google and you see what comes out, your entire history will start coming out. So this is happening in the real world, in the so-called real world. But in those expanded states, really speaking, nothing is hidden. So if you try attempt to hide something, you're highly mistaken. You cannot hide anything.
That is not necessary, Mr. Monroe. And I immediately knew why. They had been a part of the process. My concept of an external intelligent energy source, helping navigating, doing the driving was accurate. With your present need for individuation, yes.
So now Robert Monroe is operating in duality, right? So he says over here, with your present need for individualization, yes, actually everything is connected. Nothing is separate from the other. That is why you can't hide anything, right? But in our belief system, in our concept, we are still living in duality. We are still living in me and the other. So here he clearly says, with your present need for individualization, yes, there is another.
The question arose automatically. How long had this been going on? I had become aware of it only recently and had traced it back to the beginning of my OOB activity. But how about before then? Have they always been? You will become aware of such reality at an appropriate point. All I could be sure of was my own direct experience, but they must communicate with other people, with very many by different methods, very few as we are functioning at this point. I knew that was the best I would get, but I wondered about the they. We are many, and you have known many of us. So they would be correct. I hope they didn't mind the inspects label. Now it seemed inadequate. It will serve nicely at this point, as well as any other. I wondered if they were the same as those we had met in the lab with the various explorers. In some instances, but not all. So many questions, and now was my big opportunity. There will be others.
So now what is happening? Very clearly, he is being told that there are many of us, that means there are many of these individual conscious beings, for lack of a better word to explain it, who are connecting and communicating. And many times we are unaware of this communication because we don't have the language to be able to understand what is being communicated and don't have the language to communicate. But they, at a higher level of consciousness, know everything that is happening.
The first question, the first, what should be the first? Are they God, or we are created and we create just as you? If God and Creator are identical, then you are God to that which you create.
So beautiful, right? We are created and we create just as you. If God and Creator are identical, then you are God to that which you create. So we are constantly creating and we are also constantly destroying. And we are constantly being created and we are also constantly being destroyed. Even if you consider that in our own body, cells are constantly being created and cells are constantly being destroyed. We are not aware of it, but it is happening. So beautifully put over here. Aham Brahmasmi.
I couldn't help the next one, even if it killed me. I had to know. Did they? It will not kill, as you put it, nor will it harm you. You are prepared for an answer by your very presence here. Your curiosity, as you call it, the essence that is you and others in the human process, was not our creation. As we, you exist before time space human earth pattern, just as you do at this point. The inhuman experience is merely an addition to what you, however, it is an important addition.
So what he's saying very clearly here is that all of us have experienced various things, various lives, various realities, right? This is not the only reality that we are actually experiencing. Very clearly, he has put it over here. So that this is another reason why, just going into one past life regression is not going to cut to the chase, because we've had so many thousands and thousands and thousands of lives that going into one past life really does not really change stuff. The idea would be to be able to go into a state of consciousness where we start becoming more aware of where we are and how we are, and then have instant access to the state of consciousness or reality that we may have experienced in the past or the present, looking from the perspective of this 3D reality. When we say past life is in the past and future lives are in the future, but actually in an expanded state, everything is happening together. Right. So if we can access that, then we have access to everything that we have experienced and we are going to experience. But the key to the entire thing is now. What we did in the power of now, right? The more we can be in the now, the more we can have access to our true self, our true state of consciousness.
I tried to sort out what was so important in being human that it would. How do you state it? A drop of water in an ocean cannot understand the seas or the wave that casts it up on a sandy beach. Wait a minute, that came out very human. Maybe they are only superhuman graduates after all. Some of us have passed through the inhuman. I was selected because I am one of those few.
So again, these inspects have also been through the Earth Life School. Over there, they call it the Earth Life School. And what has been told in various forums is that the Earth Life School graduate is respected because it's not an easy school. The kind of lessons that we can learn here and the accelerated growth that we can have over here, you cannot have when you are in that expanded state. So, what we can experience here is so beautiful, which is very, very well. There is one clip that we show in the Gateway Voyage. It's done by something called the Colonel. It's fantastic. He has written in his will that it can only be shown in the Gateway Voyage. It cannot be shown otherwise. But he does such a fantastic job of it. I don't know. Many of you are Gateway Voyage graduates here, and you remember that clip by the Colonel. Does anyone remember it? Does anyone remember it?
No, I'll just go through my notes, I think. I'll need to.
That clip is fantastic. Anyway, chalo.
Few? I wonder how many are few? 5, 10, 1,000? It is difficult to assess due to the melding. More than the current in-physical human population, perhaps 100 times as many. That would imply they have been involved since the very beginning of human life. That is correct. Before that, we are just as you. And if several hundred billion are just a few, that must mean the total of them must be big numbers. We do not count the parts of the whole. It is not necessary. If there are that many parts of the whole, then there must be other important ways to learn other non-Earth human systems. No other precisely as you have found in human physical Earth. There are many other consciousness growth centers or schools, as you call them, throughout what you know as the physical universe.
So again, there are many. Shivangla, again, there's something wrong with your mic. So there are many schools, like this is one school. This Earth Life is one school. There are many schools in the intergalactic universe or in the conscious awareness.
I could bet that they participate in all of them. They would have to, if a very safe bet, Mr. Monroe. This was becoming an event not anything like what I expected. I was rapidly losing my sense of awe. It was replaced with a great feeling of warmth, of understanding, much on the order of old, deep friendships, yet filled with intense respect, not the usual pattern of expected angels, if that is what they were.
So we have been them and they have been us. So it is very natural that when we go into the expanded states, an affinity also starts to develop. And the more we connect with them, the more familiar we become. It's the same thing when in shamanism, when you're going out to your helping spirits and you're connecting to them, the more you connect with them, the more you work with them, the more familiar they become, and the more easy it becomes for you to work with them. This is exactly what is happening over here.
We can quickly grow some wings if you wish. No, no, please, no wings, no halos either. Although I got the clear percept staring at my inspec friend. At least that for now.
Slow down a bit, Shiva.
I could understand how humans with limited but definite momentary superconscious vision could add a halo to make the human formed inspec stand out as different. A brightly radiant form? How often in human history has such perception taken place? Miracle workers, saints, local medicine men, and last timers on their final run, no doubt.
So
No
again,
doubt at all.
so what is happening here? When we, because we are also fed with a lot of data that, these divine beings will come like this and they will be like this, that because of that belief system, we actually perceive the inspects. I'm just using the term inspect over here. These intelligences which come in front of us, because of the belief system, we perceive them like that. And they can also take the form which is connected with our belief system, so that it becomes easy for us to be able to accept them and connect with them. This was seen in the movie Contact, when she goes through that bubble and then her father appears to her, and she asks that question of that being which is there with her, are you really my father, or this is what you are? Says, no, we have come in this form because it would be easier for you to communicate and also accept the communication. Because of that, we've taken the form of your father. So they can take any form that they really want.
No doubt at all. I wanted to be very careful about this, that I had at least a faint comprehension, that I got it as specifically and accurately as I possibly could. They, inspects, were in existence before humans ever came into being, several million years ago at the minimum. By your time measurement, that is correct, as were you and all other energies that are now or have been inhuman, if you use this perspective.
So again, time and space, the way that we look at it is our perspective. It is our perspective in the 3D environment that we live in, right? In an expanded state, it is not the perspective that they would normally take.
Would that infer we as humans, the non physical energy part of us, actually are inspects and we don't know it? As we understand it, you are created by the same source. But we humans are not the same. It is difficult to express in your terms. Consider the structure of physical matter as various forms. Moving inward, you have named subconstructs as atoms. These in turns have many organization of particles that result in distinctive patterns. Your scientists have begun to understand the energy relationship of these particles. They have begun to perceive the spinning of the particle itself. It is the creative force that produces such spinning which we have in common.
So at the end of it, the spinning is in a spiralic shape, and all growth, all manifestation takes place from the spiral.
Which could mean vast differences if I work outward through the structure from the base. Differences so profound there could be no point of reconciliation, even similarity. You are presuming a complexity which in our reality is very direct and simple. It is the distortion of time-space illusion that causes this in your consciousness.
So very clearly is saying that in your 3D environment, in your reality, the time and space created by you is an illusion. So time and space actually, when we are operating from the inspect's perspective, does not exist.
I would have to try again. There must be some ongoing relationship between such inspects and humans. Else, why would they bother with us? For some reason, they need us, we need them. They have been involved with human existence since we began. I'm drawing a blank. All of your percepts are correct within certain limits.
So they need us and we need them. Through our experience, they are also learning, right? But it is not their direct experience. It is an understanding that they are experiencing when we are experiencing something. and we need them to guide us and to help us through our experiences. So it's a jugalbandi. It is not a single thing.
I began to receive a discomforting signal to take care of something back there. Back where? Where? The signal, annoying, persisted, and I tried to ignore it. What I was doing was much too important to be interrupted. I wanted to concentrate on my next thought question, but the signal got in the way. I turned to dismiss it and realized it was a need to return to my physical body. Of course, my physical body. I had to go back, but I didn't want to. The chance might never come again.
So in that out of body state, if something happens to the physical body, there will be a pullback, right? That's why we say that when you're going into the expanded states, empty your bladder. Otherwise, your bladder is going to pull you back into this physical reality.
We can meet often at this point. We understand your need. A stronger ident homing signal will be provided that you can do so. The radiation was warm, understanding friendship, and much more. And I gratefully responded and reached for the ident of my physical body and stretched. The feeling of movement back seemed short, and I automatically slipped into the second, then into the physical. By habit, I looked at the clock, 2:23 a.m. Only 6 minutes? By comparison, the problem that called me back was frustratingly minuscule. My thoughts were filled with the dazzling import of those 6 minutes as I got out of bed and went to the bathroom to empty my bladder.
So ultimately, he was called back because of his bladder.
I slept very little, if at all, the rest of the night.
So now he's had a real big conversation, right? So when we are reading it, it seems like a long conversation, but the actual time was only 6 minutes. So when we are in these expanded states, our perception of time starts to get squeezed.
During the next several weeks, the press of daily physical activity plus the eagerness and excitement in my anticipation kept me from another meeting. I had difficulty in getting into the required pre-sleep. However carefully I approached the OOB release point, after I did get relaxed, I couldn't get into the OOB state. After repeated effort, I did no more than fall asleep. I realized I was forcing it too strongly, but it was hard to control. Finally, I gave up trying for the moment, and it happened easily.
So this is exactly what he tells us now, that trying is counterproductive, right? So the more effort you put into it, the more you try to do it, the less effective you become in achieving these states of consciousness. So the more you allow the system to take you, the better it is. So forcing it or trying hard doesn't work.
Time 4:45 a.m. Awake and rested, although far past my usual cycle. I went into the unhook rollout and moved easily into the second body state. Moving out of the second was easy, and I reached for an ident to home into. It was there. I held back my excitement, stayed calm, reached and stretched, following the signal. The feeling of movement was short and quick, and I stopped. Before me was the shining form. Several others were behind it. Trying to remain calm and casual, I focused on the radiation that had been so distressing before. Now it was very tolerable, or I was getting used to it.
So as we experience something, it automatically becomes more familiar and easier for us to handle and do.
A little of both, Mr. Monroe. We did modify it somewhat for you. I had gone over many times how I would resume our communication, the questions I would ask, the order of priority in case the pattern was going to be broken off again suddenly. And the first one, your interest lay in our relationship with those inhuman experience prior to your departure too. To go to the bathroom. What an incongruity. Well, this time I made absolutely sure it wouldn't happen. No coffee, very little liquids. Cause and effect in which you place such great belief. Belief relief. That's a good one. I'll have to remember it, but the other ones behind, my friend, I don't remember there. As you have noted, there are others of us also here at this point. They have been present throughout our meeting. It is your ability to perceive that has changed. They are, how do you call it, interested. Curious is a better definition, which you understand very well.
So now what is happening? Whenever these interactions are taking place, there are people observing the interactions. Whenever anything is happening, there are energies which are observing. That, you know, that story where whenever the Ramayana is being spoken about, Hanumanji will be there. So how does that happen? That happens because these intelligent energies are always around and can be present anywhere, and we can actually perceive them also. Ravindraji, I don't know if he's here today, but Ravindraji perceives them very well, right? He actually understands when they are there and when they are not there.
I'm sure I'll need all the help I can get. Here I am consulting with a being or beings whose penetration into human life activity has been interpreted to be God, gods, angels, the devil. It was not our intent. Certain adjustments had to be made. Now it is UFOs and flying saucers, which is more in keeping with current cultural concepts. You would have lost that bet, Mr. Monroe. Such are manifestations of another pattern, of which you will soon become aware.
So what are they saying? That they appear as gods, as devil, as goddesses, etc. And that was not their intent. Okay, so ultimately what is happening? When we look at it, we constantly talk, and especially in the Vastu workshop, we talk about it, that all the Devi Devtas in the Hindu culture are basically representing just a particular frequency of vibration, nothing more than that. Now, whenever you need something, if you can focus and connect with that particular vibratory frequency, you will solve the problem or the issue that you are tackling or you are facing. So over here, they clearly says that it was not our intent and certain adjustments had to be made, right? Because we could not perceive them as what they were. So they had to adjust their form so that we could start being able to be perceptive of them. Okay. And over here, clearly he says, such are manifestations of another pattern of which you will soon become aware. So as our perception starts to increase, we will start to perceive more than what we normally perceive. So these UFOs and others, they may be existing in the same space, but vibrating at a different frequency. So because of that, we cannot perceive them. The example I keep using for this is there's one cable which comes to your television, and we can get now up to 1,000 channels, 1,000+ channels in that one cable. So how are all the channels being transmitted in that one cable? Because they are all being transmitted at different frequencies. So when you tune your TV to a particular frequency, that is the picture you will see. So, in the same way, in the space that we are living in, the reality that we are living in, there may be 100 realities in the same space, but we are only being able to perceive that reality which we are tuning into. Okay, so this is what he's saying over here.
I'd better let that one stay where it is and stick to the main point. Why adjustments, whatever that means? Because free will is such a vital part of the human learning experience, deviations from the design are frequent and predicted, as you would express it. Such adjustments are no more than, the exact term is not there, fine tuning. Yes, fine tuning.
So, so again, when we come here, we come with a set plan that, okay, this is what we want to experience or to go through in this life. But when we come here, we forget the plan, right? We have to flow with the plan if we want to connect with the plan. But we forget it because we have free will, right? Now, our inner consciousness is telling us that, this is what you need to do. But because of our free will, we say, no, we will not do A, we will do B. Now, that takes us off our life plan. Now, again, when we come back to the point of patterns, whenever patterns are taking place in our life, one of the things that it is attempting to show us that we have gone off our life plan. So we need to come back into our life plan, right? So he's saying very clearly over here that there are different frequencies, and the free will causes that frequency deviation to take place from our flight plan.
I got a percept of an immense machine, infinitely complex and complicated, with inspects climbing all over it, in and out of it, turning a knob here, a valve there, turning off a filter and cleaning it, matching waveforms on an oscilloscope, checking materials input flow. That was it. Their concern was the flow of energy through the human experience. The idea of a machine wiped away completely, and there was the physical earth with the human energy rings, encircling it, dreamlike in its quality.
So again, the intelligences are attempting to make the way that what was perceived work in that particular way. So we are constantly being fed ideas, we are constantly being fed directions as to how to do, and it is a very, very complicated kind of a mechanism. Okay, when you go into Focus 27, and especially in the Exploring for Focus 27 program, uh, yeah, Exploration 27, there is a planning center there where all these plans are made. This is very well shown in the movie Astral World. Yeah, I think it was named Astral World. And in that, they show very clearly that you are going to the planning center, you give an arzi that I want to experience this. Now, someone else has given an arzi. Let's say I want to experience being slapped. Now, there is someone else who has given an arzi that I want to experience slapping. Now, the connection will be made that when we are coming here on the earth, that I will experience the slapping and that other person will experience slapping me, right? So these connections are made. So these, when we look at karma also, what are we attempting to do? We are attempting to experience as much as possible, because only when we experience everything can we become whole. Without that, we are not whole. So again, everything is being planned, everything is being connected. If we are all sitting here today, it is not just like that. There is a plan in place which is making us come here together. The thought of coming here, where did it come from? Okay, there are so many people in the world, there are so many people in the awareness groups, but how only a specific number of people are coming for this? There has to be some kind of a plan which is working behind our active consciousness. So we are working at a deeper state, and even beyond this full consciousness that we talk about in the workshops also. That, and ultimately, what are we here? We are wanting to connect into that higher state of consciousness so that we become more and more aware of what he calls over here the flow, right? To allow things to happen rather than attempting to make them happen. That is when you click into the flow.
Your last percept indicates good progress. But if they created the process in the first place, they should have been aware that it would need maintenance, modification.
Okay, I think we can stop here today.